Vote 2020. Your voice, your future on ABC6 starts now.
The polls in Ohio are just now closing as voters will decide if President Trump will get a second term or if Joe Biden will become the 46th president of the United States.
Already around the country, we have seen more than 100 million votes cast, and that was before the polls even opened on Election Day.
And even though a record number of Ohioans voted early this year, there were still long lines at polling locations across central Ohio as people came out to cast their ballots on Election Day. We've got teams watching the polls and monitoring results from all over central Ohio tonight.
Well, start it all off in Westerville, where senior political reporter Jeff Reddick is with the Ohio Republican Party. Really a different dynamic, certainly as it relates to the parties this year, Jeff.
Yeah, a lot of them canceled, Bob, and that means from here to Cleveland to Cincinnati to Toledo to Portsmouth. This right here in Westerville where we are is Republican Central headquarters to watch the election. Democrats will be online tonight joining a Zoom election party beginning at 9. And both sides not just watching the national races, but also a lot of state races. All 99 seats in the Ohio House are up for re-election this year, or election, for example. And the current spread is 61 Republicans, 38 Democrats. That's a supermajority for Republicans, but Democrats have been focusing on breaking that supermajority. They would need 12 seats to totally flip the power in the Ohio House, but would have to flip just 2 seats there to be able to break the supermajority. I spoke with both party chairs. Republican Jane Timken here in Ohio says the Larry Householder HB6 scandal hurts this. And Democrat David Pepper says he knows it.
Obviously, with the scandal of the former speaker, the Ohio Republican Party stepped up. We basically started running those campaigns and raising money for them. I feel very good about my team and our efforts.
This can't continue if our state wants to succeed. And so every Democrat that gains a seat and every step we can take away from this current broken, corrupt system is a step in the right direction.
And Democrats very confident that they will at least pick up a couple of seats in the Ohio House. Now, the results are, of course, rolling in right now as we speak. Again, Republicans will have a long night here watching those votes come in. Democrats, again, online beginning at 9. Guys?
Jeff Reddick live for us tonight. Thank you. Now, polls in Ohio, as we said, are now closed. The election returns and results will soon be released. Tom Bosco live at the American Legion for us tonight in Newark. Tom, what are you hearing and seeing there?
Well, right now the polls are closed. Take a look. We got some poll workers actually here kind of picking up signs there. They said a minute ago, we don't want to be in your shot, but the action is too good there. It actually tells the story right there, picking up those signs, wrapping things up. We did see a couple of people run in here right at the last minute, but no major lines or no major rush here. Earlier in the day, we saw some short, quick lines pop up here at this polling place at this American Legion post. Didn't really see a rush of after-work voters, but it was steady. Now, the Licking County Board of Elections tells me that more than half of the eligible voters cast ballots early this year. They expect to break their turnout record of 72% set back in 2016's presidential election. Now, the counting they expect should be finalized here in Licking County tonight, but will we know national results tonight? One voter here says he doesn't think so.
I do see where Trump wants to contest it with the Supreme Court.
Does that make you nervous that we might not know?
No, I know it eventually sort itself out.
All right, tonight I've got my eye on the congressional race here, the 12th District congressional race. Republican Troy Balderson fighting for a second term. He's got a challenge from Democrat Elena Shearer and Libertarian John Stewart. Now, as you guys mentioned with Jeff there, no watch parties tonight, or at least none that I'm invited to. Balderson is gathering with supporters at a hotel here in Newark. Shearer is going to be at her home with a few folks, but in this age of COVID, the press is being kept away from both of those gatherings. gatherings here. If we do, and when we do hear from those candidates, we're expecting to hear from them virtually via Zoom or some other video channel. Reporting live in Newark, I'm Tom Bosco, ABC 6 News.
Thank you, Tom. Well, Rodney Dunnigan also has a very busy night ahead of us. As you heard Jeff Reddick mention a moment ago, 99 races right now up for grabs in the State House, and Rodney's monitoring the big ones for us.
He's live in the newsroom gathering the latest numbers as they come in. Now, Rodney, some are calling the race for State Representative Larry Householder's seat one of the most controversial. Tell us more about that.
Well, that's exactly right, Stacia. Of course, he's running for another 2 years at the State House, and he's running unopposed, meaning despite all of the recent controversy and the charges against him, he will more than likely get to keep that seat. Now, the racketeering case against him cost him his position as Speaker of the House, and a conviction could land him in prison for 20 years. Despite it all, he's still got plenty of support in his district, including the endorsement of the Perry County Republican Party.
I'm a strong believer of innocent until proven guilty. Out of all the candidates out there, I think he is the #1 guy for the job.
All right, listen to this. Another big race that we're following tonight. The Franklin County prosecutor, Ron O'Brien, is fighting to keep his position. Former appeals court judge Gary Tyak is hoping to come away with a win in that race. We'll be watching that one closely. We'll also be tracking races for the Ohio Supreme Court as well. Now, these numbers will be coming in nonstop tonight as soon as we get that information, and those races are called. Of course, we'll bring that information to you live right away, so get ready. It's probably going to be a wild night, which, like most election nights, it usually is. Bob and Stacia, back to you.
All right, Rodney, thank you. Now, straight ahead, we are checking in with the presidential candidates to see how they're spending an election night without the traditional watch parties that we know of. It's Election Night 2020 on ABC 6.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. We're expecting to get some results from those.
Six, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Weeks after hundreds of teachers took to the picket lines in Gahanna, voters decided the fate of the school district's new levy. Our Lisa Rontola joins us after hearing who was for and against. Lisa.
Stacia, this levy would pay for the destruction of the current Gahanna Lincoln High School and also pay for the construction and replacement of a new one. But this is also the very same spot we saw many teachers leave their classrooms just weeks ago. Now, teachers then told me they did support the levy that would cost someone with a $100,000 home an extra $374 a year in property taxes. The district just passed its last levy in 2018. This year, groups formed on Facebook to block it. Many voters told me they didn't even hear much about this levy, if at all. Even those who voted yes know it will face obstacles, including COVID-19 tonight.
I think at times like this, people find that You know, the base things, your family, it's important. If you want a great outcome in the next generation, the kids got to get educated.
And within the next couple of minutes, I will be doing a Zoom interview with the superintendent of Gahanna Jefferson Schools with what he is projecting and what he is hoping for tonight. But also 2 more levies on 2 other ballots of different school districts, those being Delaware and Pickerington local schools. We will be tracking those races as well. For now, reporting live in Gahanna, I'm Lisa Rontala for ABC 6 News.
Lisa, thank you. Business owners in downtown Columbus are preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best. There is concern that no matter who wins the election, there could be more protests and more vandalism. We saw several crews boarding up shops this afternoon, but one business owner tells us this should actually serve as a positive reminder to the community.
There is just such a sense of community downtown, even though this is all going on. Nobody wants it to change and go back to anything other than us being a community down here.
Paul Westrick has been the owner of Zeros for 10 years. While he's never seen anything like this before, he says there isn't another place that he would want his store to be.
And we have some presidential race results from around the country already. The Associated Press now calling Kentucky and West Virginia for President Trump, and they say that Joe Biden has won Vermont and Virginia. Well, if the polls are to be believed, Ohio and its 18 electoral votes still very much in play tonight. President Trump won here by 8 points 4 years ago. And James Rosen tells us his campaign is confident that tonight, even though the polling shows a dead heat.
Greetings from the White House, where President Trump will watch the election returns unfold tonight. His wife, the First Lady, Melania Trump, offered a brief wave to onlookers outside the polling place she visited earlier today in Palm Beach, Florida, a state where past experience and the latest polling averages tell us every vote will be critical if Mr. Trump is to win re-election. In a conference call with reporters Monday, senior Trump campaign officials projected confidence about the strength they say the president will demonstrate with Election Day voters, predicting that where ballots cast today are concerned, the Trump-Pence ticket will come out ahead of their Democratic opponents with margins of more than 1 million ballots in Pennsylvania, 500,000 in Florida, 400,000 in Michigan, and 400,000 in North Carolina. Earlier today, the president made his final campaign stop of the cycle to visit his own campaign headquarters in Arlington, Virginia, where he thanked supporters and volunteers and made, in response to a reporter's question, a final defense of his handling of the coronavirus, by many accounts the top agenda item for a majority of voters across the country today.
Success is going to bring unity, and it was bringing it before, and then we got hit with the China virus. And that certainly you had to go back, and I think we've done an incredible job with respect to that, other than public relations, and I'm not sure that it's possible to convince you of it, because, you people were not really convincible no matter what we did.
The president spoke in unusually subdued tones, citing a choppy voice after 6 campaign appearances yesterday. When asked by a reporter, he said he has not given any thought to a concession speech or a victory speech, but he then added, "Winning is easy, losing never is." At the White House, James Rosen.
Still to come tonight, a look at issue 2 in Columbus for a civilian review board. We're updating the race for you next when Election Night 2020 continues.
Yes, we did.
You're going to freak her out a little bit, though. Do you mind hanging out back over here? I don't know, because she's trying to concentrate, and it's kind of unnerving having lights in her face and someone hanging out.
Mic check 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8.
In Ohio before today, 3.4 million people cast their absentee ballots or voted early in person.
Steve Levine, as he so often does on election nights, joining us from the Franklin County Board of Elections, following the ballot yet again there. Steve, I would imagine right now you're awaiting the arrivals?
Those arrivals should come in about 45 minutes to an hour. Usually what happens at 7:30 when the polls close, they break everything down, and a poll worker tells me that usually takes about an hour or so. But here's the plan. Here's how it works. We tell you every year they're going to bring all that tabulation, all the equipment here, and it's going to be in about 45 minutes. Cars will start coming down this lane, and then they will make their way into the Board of Elections garage, where you see workers there ready. They've got their baskets, and this is how it's going to work. Those cars will drive in. There will be a representative with the Democratic and the Republican Party. They will then give them all the equipment that they use during the day. And the most important piece is those tabulation cards, which have all the votes. Those votes will then be taken inside the Board of Elections, where they will be tabulated. This year, a little bit different because of everything going on this year is a little bit different. You can see that all the folks, including the security, the sheriff's office, everybody is all wearing their masks. We're wearing our masks when we're not around anywhere and we're self-contained. They will have some other protocols here when it comes to counting those ballots. They will have their social distancing. They'll be 6 feet apart. And in fact, some of those cases where the Democrat and the Republican officials work together, they have been told to sit as far apart as possible in the car, because part of the rules and regulations is that a representative from each party be in that car. In some cases, the representative from the Democrat or Republican but will be in a car in front or behind. But these are some of the rules and the new policies that are in effect because of the coronavirus. As I said, these cars expected to be showing up in the next 45 minutes or so, and of course we'll be here to show you the big political parade as they drive in to give their votes and the tabulations, and we should get those results in a matter of hours. Guys, back to you.
All right, Steve Levine live for us. Thanks so much. Before we move on, we do want to get to some new information coming from the Associated Press. The Associated Press now calling Ohio's 3rd Congressional District for incumbent Representative Joyce Beatty.
Now getting a 5th term is Joyce Beatty. The election, though, isn't just about the candidates, but also some controversy, especially when it comes to the issues.
And here in Columbus, issue 2 could make city history.
Now, voters deciding whether to change the city charter to create a civilian board that would keep tabs on the police. It's an issue at the heart of Mayor Ginther's effort to, as he calls it, reform the Columbus Division of Police, and it's set the mayor and the police force against each other.
Issue 1 is all about energy. It would allow city leaders to get power from an alternative supplier for small businesses and residents who have not chosen one. City Council saying it would give them more control over electricity sources, including the ability to use cleaner, renewable energy.
And then there's issue 24, which would help people fighting addiction across Franklin County, but it would also increase property taxes. So most of the money would go to the county's Adam H. Board, which treats substance abuse and mental health issues.
Let's take a closer look, though, now at issue 2, the Civilian Review Board. 6 on Your Side investigator Tara Morgan has been talking to the different voices involved in this issue. She joins us now from City Hall. So, Tara, this has been contentious from the start, to say the least.
It certainly has, Stacia, a war of words between the mayor and the Fraternal Order of Police. Mayor Andrew Ginther says this is the kind of change that people in Columbus have demanded. The FOP wants to make sure things are done fairly. I did go out to a couple polling locations earlier this evening, and we tried to talk to some voters. Most of them did not want to share their opinions with me. I found only one who said that they did vote for issue 2, which would create a civilian review board with subpoena power and inspector general to investigate alleged officer misconduct. Now, the FOP says there hasn't been enough information to make an educated decision. The work group seated by the mayor met 5 times so far, and they are looking at best practices in other cities to come up with a model for Columbus. They've been told it could cost anywhere from tens of thousands to millions of dollars. That's all dependent on staffing. A civilian review board was a recommendation by the Columbus Community Safety Advisory Commission. Now, this work group wants the board to implement discipline decisions on officers, and that will likely be a hot topic during union contract negotiations, which begin later this month. The FOP contract ends in early December. Now, we expect to hear from the mayor as well as the FOP president later on this evening. We'll bring that to you. For now, we're live at City Hall. Tara Morgan, ABC 6 News.
Thanks, Tara. And we'll check in with Kaylee Gunderson now. Kaylee's at the Delaware County Board of Elections. I recall they had an issue with the mailing out duplicate ballots there at the start of early voting. Kaylee, any problems on Election Day itself?
So, Bob, no problems thus far, but we can tell you that the early voting results and the absentee ballot results should be coming in just a little bit after 8 o'clock. So we're awaiting those right now. And we know that those results this year, the votes for those have broken records already, doubling what we saw just 4 years ago back in 2016. So this election, we have 89,000 early votes, people who voted either in person or sent in an absentee ballot. As of tonight, just 4,000 of the ballots requested have not made it back to the Board of Elections. But as we were sitting here tonight getting ready, awaiting these results, we saw some people coming in at the very last second, hand delivering their ballot. One person told us he just wanted to have the peace of mind knowing that he got it here, handed it in himself. And another voter, John Duckworth, tells me that while he is a procrastinator, he waited too long to get it sent back in. He's just relieved he did get it in time tonight.
I'm really happy that my work schedule ended at 6 today and I could run up here and get it done. So yeah, I'm so happy.
And the Board of Elections doesn't typically get all of the precincts reporting until 11 o'clock. So still a few more hours to go and a lot that's got to happen between now and then. But we'll, of course, keep you updated as it gets closer to then. And as I said, we're hoping to get some of those early results in just a few minutes. And then we'll, of course, keep you updated on those as well. Back to you.
Kaylee Gunderson tonight for us in Delaware County. Thanks, Kaylee. Joe Biden wrapping up his campaign stops tonight, heading home to Wilmington, Delaware.
National correspondent Atra El-Nashar is with his campaign, where they're waiting to see if a winner will be declared tonight.
Good afternoon. Before he heads here to Wilmington tonight, Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden is visiting arguably the most sought-after state in this race of Pennsylvania. And I recently spoke to a former senior advisor of Biden's who tells me that no matter what happens tonight, Biden will be focused on his faith and his family.
With his grandkids by his side, Joe Biden starting Election Day with a church service in Delaware, visiting the graves of his late wife, daughter, and son Beau.
How you feel, Mr. Vice President?
Then to Pennsylvania, a state that could determine the winner of the White House, visiting his childhood home and thanking volunteers before a rally in Philadelphia.
Number one, I said when I announced I wanted to restore the soul of the country. Well, that wasn't being melodramatic. All I meant was restore basic decency and honor.
Mo Vela, former senior advisor to Biden during the first year and a half of his vice presidency, tells Sinclair the Biden campaign will keep a close eye on Texas and Florida early on in the night.
If it looks like we are victorious, he will win with humility. If he looks like he's going to not be victorious, he will lose with grace and humility. It'll be a night where the Bidens and all of us are going to find out exactly who and what this country is and what she will be into the future.
Now, Mo Vela also tells me that Biden tends to be superstitious on election days, so he doesn't like anyone to talk about victory until the results are in, and that's consistent with the cautiously optimistic tone the campaign's been taking in these past few days. Now, whether or not we know the winner this evening, the campaign tells us that Biden will be speaking from here outside the Chase Center later this evening. In Wilmington, Delaware, I'm Atra El-Nashar. Back to you.
Election night 2020 continues with a look at the 4 congressional districts up for grabs in central Ohio. We are back in less than 2 minutes.
I'm here. Who's here? Hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Well, of course, the race everyone in the country is watching, the presidential race, driving the vast majority of voters to the polls.
But will a winner be declared tonight, or will that declaration be delayed because of the record number of ballots cast?
And we will talk more about that. Also at stake, a number of congressional seats in Ohio. In the 12th District, Republican Congressman Troy Balderson facing challenges from Democrat Elena Scherer and Libertarian Jon Stewart.
We can call the 3rd District now. The Associated Press says that Democratic incumbent Joyce Beatty has been declared the winner, now elected to a 5th term in Congress. That again from the Associated Press.
And in the 15th Congressional District, 5-term Republican incumbent Steve Stivers hopes to get a 6th term over Democratic challenger Joel Newby. And 3rd candidate Shane Hoffman, who's running a write-in campaign with the American Solidarity Party.
Your experience watching the results pouring in will likely be a lot different than it was back in 2016.
With the pandemic, many businesses are not hosting watch parties this year. Mary Smith live for us in the Short North now with this story. Mary.
Bob and Stacia, super quiet out here in the Short North. Not a lot of people out and about. If you're passing the bars and restaurants, it's really, really quiet out here. Now, we spoke with the owner of Oddfellows again here in the Short North. He says that he is airing election results tonight as they come in, but it's a decision that he went back and forth on. Some restaurants telling us that they are not airing the election results tonight, saying that the political climate is so intense and they don't want to attract any crowds from the pandemic. Again, the owner tells us that this was not an easy decision for him to make.
We went back and forth on it quite a bit, like we went back and forth about boarding up, and we decided that we're not going to board up at any of our locations, and we're going to show the results, just because it's something that so many people are interested in right now.
And Saburo tells us he is expecting a slight bump in business tonight, but again, it's very quiet out here. Not many people walking out and about. We did speak to a few people who tell us that they just had to go out and grab a drink before they see those results tonight. Guys.
Right, Mary Smith down in the Short North. Thank you, Mary. Well, we're almost 30 minutes out now since the polls closed. We should start seeing local results here momentarily.
Rodney Dennigan tracking things for us in the newsroom tonight. So, Rodney, everyone seems ready to see some official numbers.
And, Stacia, it certainly will not take long, especially in some of these local races. This election season has certainly been very historic. The state of Ohio has shattered election numbers, nearly 4 million ballots cast as of yesterday. And, of course, the numbers are still coming in for tonight. Now, what we need to keep an eye out on for tonight, though, are those absentee ballots. Those will be counted throughout the night and over the coming days. It's unclear what sort of impact that could have on the presidential election or in any of these local races across the state of Ohio.
We know that a large number of those absentee ballots will come in over the next 10 days. Of course, boards of elections can receive ballots up until and through the 13th of November, as long as they were postmarked by Monday, November 2nd. And we know that every legally cast ballot must be counted and will be counted.
And of course, the millions of people across this state who cast their ballots over the last few weeks want their voices to be heard. Hopefully, most of these races will be decided tonight, especially the presidential race. Of course, we'll be giving updates all night long. We're tracking a number of issues when the final numbers come in. Of course, we'll bring it to you ASAP. Bob and Stacia, back to you.
All right, Rodney Dunnigan live for us tonight. Of course, Election Night 2020 just getting started here on ABC6. Now, in just a few minutes, we're about to hand things over to the team in New York who will keep you up to date on the presidential race and the balance of power in Congress, because we did just get some results from South Carolina.
And?
Trump being called the winner there in South Carolina. That's the latest state to come in. They've been starting to trickle in now that some polls are closing.
A very important battleground state for both. And again, President Trump has won that. So we've set the table for you here locally. We'll be checking in throughout the night with updates on how Ohio is voting and all of our local races. Complete coverage coming up tonight at 11.
And of course, we will continue to follow those local races as we continue our coverage. One more time, some of the information that we're learning just in the last half an hour. The Associated Press calling Ohio's 3rd Congressional District for incumbent Representative Joyce Beatty again. The Democrat has won 4 elections previously since 2012 by a margin of 38%, and now this marks her 5th victory.
Yeah, still keeping a very close eye here on the 15th Congressional and the 12th Congressional among the local Capitol Hill races that we're watching here tonight. Also keeping a close eye on the State House races as well. So we'll be back with cut-ins as the national coverage picks up here now. We'll come back from time to time and give you updates on the local results. And again, full results coming up tonight at 11 right here on ABC6.
Vote 2020. Your voice, your future on ABC6 starts now.
Happening now, the state of Ohio awaiting results in multiple races across the state, including the race for the White House.
This election so monumental for the state of Ohio and the country that we've expanded our team coverage to other Ohio cities and our nation's capital. Our teams in Cincinnati and Dayton standing by right now to brief us on races that they're watching tonight. First, though, our senior political reporter Jeff Reddick in Columbus leading us off. Jeff, set the scene for us tonight.
Well, we're beginning to see how those electoral votes are shaking out, the election votes, in Ohio's presidential election so far. Of course, there were 3.4 million absentee and early votes tallied in Ohio. As expected right now, as just those results start to come back, it is a majority of Democrat votes for Joe Biden. You can see the advantage about 60 to 38% right now for Joe Biden. What Republicans here with me at the Renaissance Hotel in Westerville, Ohio, and in Washington are going to be watching is those precincts coming in, people who voted today. How will they shake out? So you got this early advantage in early and absentee voting, as was expected. What Republicans are going to see is how much ground they can make up in in-person voting today, which we certainly expect to happen and expect to see this race tighten up for president. I spoke with both of the Ohio party chairs today. Republican Jane Timken said she is reasonably certain that Trump will take Ohio. Democrat David Pepper told me he's just happy to have shaken things up.
We feel pretty good about Ohio and cautiously optimistic that the president will win Ohio. It's always a battleground state.
Trump did not want to be having to play defense in Ohio, and he's had to play it in Ohio for months now. So, we're proud that we are within striking distance.
It's a different year, of course, as far as politics go. Nothing is untouched. So this is really one of the only election night parties in the state here at the Renaissance Hotel in Westerville. This is where Republicans will watch the results come in. Democrats will be live online virtually at 9 o'clock, and we'll join them then.
All right, Jeff Reddick, live for us. Thank you, Jeff. This is not just about the presidential race tonight. State politics, of course, could see a big shift if things go well for Democrats tonight.
We'll go now to Megan O'Rourke, who's standing by in Cincinnati for us.
Disbalance, unbalance of power in Ohio. And so what we've got right now in the Ohio House is 61 to 38 advantage for Republicans. It would take just 2 seats flipping for the Democrats to break a supermajority for Republicans. And it would take, of course, a much larger shift, 12 seats to be able to flip seats from Republican to Democrat, to flip power in the House from Republicans to Democrats. So that may not happen, but Democrats are reasonably certain that they'll flip seats and break the supermajority Republicans hold in the Ohio House.
All right, Jeff, thank you. Now, also tonight, Dayton voters awaiting the results of the 10th congressional seat. Longtime incumbent Republican U.S. Representative Mike Turner faces newcomer Democrat Desiree Timms. Megan O'Rourke joining us now with more details. Megan, what are you hearing?
Well, that's right. In addition to the race for the White House, another race that we are closely monitoring here in Dayton is the balance of power in Congress, specifically District 10. As you mentioned, that district covers Montgomery, Greene, and Fayette counties. Incumbent Republican Representative Mike Turner has held that office since 2003. He's a former mayor of Dayton, and in Congress, he's on the House Intelligence Committee and is a subcommittee chairman on the House Armed Services Committee. Now, his Democratic opponent is Desiree Timms. She's a former Capitol Hill staffer, having worked for Senator Sherrod Brown. Also, while working in D.C., she was elected president of the Senate Black Legislative Staff Caucus. Timms has received endorsements from former President Obama as well as the Biden-Harris campaign. Now, again, results just starting to come in, so this is still very early, but right now, Timms is ahead. It's showing 52% to 47% for Turner. That's with just over 183,000 votes reporting.
Megan, voters turning out in huge numbers across the state today. Were there any issues at polling locations today in the Dayton area?
Now, all in all, we're hearing that things went pretty smoothly. There were a few minor hiccups throughout the Miami Valley. We do know that there were some issues with some electronic voting machines at a polling location in Greene County. We're told voters there had to switch to paper ballots for a short time until those electronic machines were repaired. At that point, everything was back up and running, and we're told that went relatively smoothly. There was also an accident. This was at a polling location in Miami County. An SUV actually ran into that polling location. However, there was only minor damage to the building, no injuries reported, so we're told voting was not interrupted. Back to you.
Megan O'Rourke live for us. Thank you. Now, the first polls are now closed.
Our chief political correspondent, Scott Thuman, tracking the late-breaking developments for us tonight from Capitol Hill.
Election night results getting off to a quick start. Early wins for President Trump in Kentucky and Joe Biden in Vermont. Not big surprises, but now it starts to get really fun as we take a look at some of the big states where the polls are closing. Florida, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and they're nail biters, every one of them. Take a look at Florida, for example. This is a state that President Trump won last time around by 1.2%. Before that, President Obama won it by 0.9%. Could come down to the wire. Always an indicator of what's going on in the Southeast. Georgia is another one. President Trump won that by 5 points last time around, but the margins are shrinking for Republicans. It's been a stronghold of theirs with a couple of exceptions since 1972. Can they hold on to it? So now we look ahead. What about big states that are still prizes and could be an indicator for the rest of the country, like Ohio? Republicans always say you don't win the White House without winning Ohio. It's a state that he flipped from President Obama last time around. This time, Joe Biden thinks he can flip it back. We'll have complete coverage for you throughout the night with these updates as more results come in. I'm Scott Thuman. Now back to you.
Scott, thank you. And we're also keeping a close eye on other races in our state that are generating interest.
Yeah, Walter Randolph right now, rather Walter Smith Randolph, joining us from our sister station in Cincinnati. So Walter, what are some of the big decisions that Cincinnati voters face today?
Well, today, really, Cincinnati is focusing on Ohio's 1st Congressional District and Ohio's 2nd Congressional District. In Ohio's 1st Congressional District, you have Steve Chabot. He's the incumbent Republican. He is being taken on by Kate Schroeder. She's a newcomer. She's never held office before. Now, Steve Chabot, he has been serving in Congress for about 24 years. I got to tell you that some early voting results have come in from Warren County, and in Warren County, Democratic strategists said that for Kate Schroeder to win, she would need about 35% of the vote in Warren County, and then she could get Hamilton County because it leans more blue. She right now is at 38% in Warren County, so things are looking good for Kate Schroeder. It could be an interesting night. In the 2nd Congressional District, you have Brad Winstrup, who is an incumbent Republican. He's being taken on by Jamie Castle. She is also a newcomer. Right now, Brad Winstrup has been polling high in that race in Ohio's 2nd Congressional District. Bob and Stacia?
All right, Walter Smith Randolph tonight for us from Cincinnati. Thank you, Walter. As we mentioned earlier, this is a monumental election and already one that's making history.
To give us more insight into what's at stake tonight, we're joined by political analyst Herb Asher via Zoom. Herb, good evening to you.
Good evening to you.
What's the sense you're getting at this point?
It's an impressive turnout throughout the nation. It's very clear that citizens are engaged. It's also clear that there'll be many states that will be decided by a margin of less than 1%. Early in the evening, certainly I think we'll be looking, how does Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin go? Because those were the 3 states that Trump carried that actually broke the Democrats' blue wall. I think most people anticipate that Wisconsin and Michigan are returning to the Democrats this year, but Pennsylvania is the battleground. And I think many people believe that Trump needs to win Pennsylvania if he loses Michigan and Wisconsin. If Democrats can win Ohio or Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, they'll be competitive in all of those. That basically ends Trump's prospects of re-election. But if all those close states wind up going Republican, so Ohio goes narrowly Republican and Florida and Georgia, et cetera, then in fact the focus will indeed be on Pennsylvania, and that will probably determine who the next president is. But if the states break a little differently, the Democrats could have an electoral college landslide.
Well, so a lot of focus on Pennsylvania. I mean, we've seen a lot of visits there recently, but Ohio really is known for being an indicator state. So at this point, we've picked the winning presidential candidate in every election since 1964, the longest streak of any state. So at this point, do you think that streak continues, and how important is Ohio at this point?
Well, it's interesting because a year ago, a lot of the commentators in Washington were not talking about Ohio as being a pivotal state or a battleground state or a swing state. And they were saying that because Donald Trump won in 2016 by a large margin, 8 percentage points. And in 2018, the Republicans swept all of the statewide offices. And of course, the Republicans dominate the legislature and all of that. And so a lot of people were saying, well, Ohio is no longer a swing state. It's not purple. It's now moving red, or at least pink. And that sort of changed about a month or two ago when, in fact, we saw polls showing that the margin between Trump and Biden was very narrow. And so we then got re-elevated back to a swing state. And my guess is we're going to have results tonight that will say, yeah, Ohio is a battleground in presidential races once again. And should Biden win, that will reinforce that. But even a close victory by Trump will really suggest, okay, there's more strength for Democrats than the commentators had thought. And one last point, usually when you look at states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, I call those the Big Ten states in part. It's hardest for the Democrats to win Ohio for a whole variety of reasons. It's just a more Republican state than the others. And if Democrats can be competitive in Ohio, that probably suggests they're even stronger in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota.
Professor Asher, you have seen a lot of elections in your day. What about this one stands out for you?
Well, one thing that stands out, and I'll try to say this nicely, is I have never seen a candidate, and certainly never seen an incumbent president, who throughout the campaign was doing his best to undermine the integrity of the election system, talking about fraud, rigged elections, and things like that, saying that I might not accept the results. That is not the way we did it in the past. Most candidates, winners or losers, had a certain dignity to them. So the president really has increased the tension, if you will. And so I don't think I've ever seen an election where people are so worried about what's going to happen the day after. Is there going to be violence or riots or whatever? I don't think so. And I think Election Day is coming off reasonably well. But that's the one thing I don't think I've ever seen, at least in my lifetime.
Well, you're a busy man. The calls are coming in. We'll let you go. Thanks so much for your time tonight, Professor Asher.
I am sorry for that.
Not at all. We all do. OSU Professor Herb Asher. Thanks so much.
You.
Well, and right now ballots are on their way to be counted in Franklin County and around the state.
Steve Levine outside the Board of Elections, keeping an eye out for those ballots and their arrival. Steve?
Yeah, Franklin County right now is like every other county in Ohio. Let me show you what's going on right now. You can see the lanes are ready, the security is ready, and you can see in the back cars starting to show up with those very important ballots. This is the third vehicle that showed up. Car started about 10, 15 minutes ago, and inside that vehicle is actually a representative from the Democratic and the Republican Party, where they will be arriving and they will be going through the garage right now, where they will be giving the workers inside. You can hear lots of cheers when they go through, welcoming these very tired poll workers who have been on the job since around 5:30 this morning when they showed up at the polls. Now, what's going to happen now is you see those big bins. They will go up to the car. They will put all the equipment inside, and they will have those very important tabulation cards, which they will take in and start using to tabulate. As I said, it takes about an hour to close down the polling places, and here you see again, we can see right down the lane the steady stream of cars delivering those very important vote counts. And because of the coronavirus, I can tell you things are a little bit different. You can see everybody wearing their mask. That includes the sheriff's office, all the workers, and the Democratic and Republican Party representatives in each car. Because, as I said, there has to be a representative from the Democratic and the Republican Party to drop off these votes. And they've been told, I talked with one of them and said, you can be in the car. If you don't want to be in the car, you have to be spread apart as far as you can because rules require you to be in that car. As I said, that's the third or fourth car. The parade of politics expect to go on throughout the evening, and we'll be here to show it all to you guys.
Democracy in action right there on live television. Thank you very much, Steve. Police reform has been a hot topic for most of the year in Columbus, certainly, and the mayor has said that issue 2 on the ballot could be a huge step toward his reforms. During weeks of protest in Columbus earlier this year, people demanded police reform, and one of those demands was a civilian review board. Tara Morgan has been following us since the beginning tonight. Big issue on the ballot, Tara.
A huge issue on the ballot. This is a charter amendment, so this could be history making for the city of Columbus. Mayor Ginther expects a big win tonight. He has talked about how much support he has had since the summer when he seated that work group to develop this civilian review board. The FOP says there wasn't enough information out there for voters to digest before they went to the polls. We heard a lot of talk about this civilian review board. This one would have subpoena power since those summer protests. And the mayor continues to point out that this was a recommendation by the Columbus Community Safety Advisory Commission, which put out its report back in January. Mayor Ginther says this is the kind of change that people have demanded. The FOP wants to make sure that things are done fairly. The FOP president says even if it passes tonight, it still needs to go up for negotiation with the FOP as their contract ends in early December. Back to you.
Well, Tara, what sort of details have been made available about this board?
Well, the working group that I had mentioned, they've been meeting virtually. They've met 5 times so far since early August, and their next meeting will be November 10th. Now, if you watch these virtual meetings, you heard how they're hovering around 7 to 11 members to be on this board. They want these board members possibly appointed and that they could serve 2 4-year terms. They've also talked about the price point and how much other cities around the country have paid out for these boards, and that could be in the tens to thousands of dollars to millions of dollars, depending on the staffing that you have, not just for the board, but the Inspector General office as well.
Cost may be a sticking point. Any other sticking points come to mind?
Well, Baker Hostetler, the law firm who does the negotiations with the FOP, they were talking to the working group that is working to develop this board that there would be significant hurdles with some of the language in the FOP contract. And the examples that they gave, over 6 or 7 articles that might be contentious points, would be discipline, grievance procedures, and protecting officers during investigations. Of course, we will hear from the mayor after the results come in tonight, and we will also hear from the FOP depending on what happens tonight. Back to you.
Tara Morgan following issue 2 every step of the way now. Let's check back in with our team in Cincinnati. Senator Mitch McConnell, top Republican in the U.S. Senate, is fending off a challenge from northern Kentucky native Amy McGrath. James Pilcher is keeping a close eye on this from us tonight from Cincinnati. Good evening, James.
Good evening, Bob. Actually, the Associated Press has already called this race for the U.S. Senate Majority Mitch McConnell, the Republican of Louisville. It's right now we've got 63% of precincts reporting, and McConnell has 56% of the vote to 41% for McGrath. Now, this battle had pit the venerable McConnell against the up-and-coming Democratic star Amy McGrath. He is looking to see, he actually now won his 7th term in the Senate. He took over as majority leader 5 years ago. Now, he's made some controversial moves over the years. He first stopped the vote on President Barack Obama's Supreme Court nominee. Then he pushed through his other, more conservative judge to the High Court just a few weeks ago, just a week or two before the election. McConnell has also been at the center of Washington's response to the pandemic. He did help get the CARES Act through in the spring, but many blamed him for the failure of a second round of stimulus this fall. He portrays himself as the voice of the Midwest among congressional leadership and says he's been able to get Kentucky much more funding than it would have received. We did receive a statement earlier from Graff saying she thanks all her supporters and will look forward to her next move. Live in Covington.
James Pilcher reporting tonight from Cincinnati.
Vote 2020. Your voice, your future on ABC6 starts now.
Well, the polls will be closed for about an hour in Ohio. Ballots are ready to be counted.
Let's check on the races that we are following in Columbus. Democratic Representative Joyce Beatty challenged for the 3rd Congressional District by Republican Mark Richardson. This race has been called for Joyce Beatty.
Also being challenged tonight, Franklin County Prosecutor Ron O'Brien, Democrat Gary Tyack running against O'Brien. And right now, Tyack with a sizable lead, 62 to 36% over Ron O'Brien.
We want to go now to Jeff Reddick joining us live from the Republican Watch Party happening in downtown. What can you tell us, Jeff?
Well, there hasn't been much action here yet. Just as the polls closed at 7:30, Republican Chairwoman Jane Timken came into the room. Just let us know the polls were closing. She'd be talking to us since after that, but we haven't seen her since then, rather is what I meant to say. Still, we're following the results closely here from the state of Ohio in the presidential election. It remains wide, but of course we're still waiting for a lot of votes to come in, specifically in Ohio right now. Joe Biden leading President Trump 55 to 44%, but this has actually shrunk down from early on. We were looking at a 66 to 33% advantage, then a 60% to around 40%, 38% advantage. So it's really tightening up as more votes come in. We're of course getting those precinct reports that will be coming in now, the individual in-person votes from today. And that's when we're going to see, we think, things really tighten up and reflect the polls, which are a toss-up for Ohio. So that's what we're seeing right now. We'll let you know when we hear from Republicans here. Democrats have a virtual election night party tonight. That begins at 9 o'clock on Zoom. We'll have that for you later as well. Guys?
Jeff, thank you. Let's check in now with reporter Steve Levine following your ballot's path.
And it seems the ballots are starting to arrive, Steve.
Okay, looks like we're having some trouble with Steve, but we did see that the ballots were starting to show up, and so we will continue to follow that closely and update you as more ballots arrive.
Yeah. Jeff Reddick back out at the Westerville headquarters for the Republican Party right now. Jeff, curious about just how many folks are out there. Are they starting to gather?
So this party is actually split between several conference rooms and ballrooms here at the Renaissance Hotel in Westerville. I know across the hall is where we've heard some applause when Republican Chairwoman Jane Timken spoke from this room. It was video fed into the room across the hallway from us, and she was able to get some applause that we could hear through an open doorway. We do understand that there are several rooms. I know there's another media room to my right, so you're probably looking at several hundred, maybe 1,000 or so people inside the various rooms here at the Renaissance. But again, all spread out. You can see behind me that there are even some plexiglass dividers in between the various reporters here in the media room where I am. and we've been, spaced or protected that way for most of the evening. We don't know what's going on in other rooms as we're kind of sequestered here. We will get video feeds from other rooms, or we'll get podium speeches from here. Even victory speeches might come through via video feed tonight, and we'll certainly wait on those and bring them to you as we can. Democrats, meanwhile, are expected to have a lot of people from all over the state joining into that virtual video call led by the Ohio Democratic Chairman, David Pepper. We do expect Joyce Beatty will be there. We've got a call scheduled with the city attorney, Zach Klein, here in Columbus as well. So Democrats certainly fanning out over the online airwaves, I suppose you'd say, as best as they can and trying to get their message out too. Going to be an interesting night, a really unique night of Ohio politics for us here, like nothing we've ever seen before.
Yeah, but thanks, Jeff. Anticipating a Zoom call victory speech here, well, for Joyce Beatty, for example, here coming up around about 9 o'clock. She, as Stacia mentioned, her race has been called.
Our team coverage of the 2020 election continues. We have more results from Columbus and Franklin County in a few moments. Stay with us.
Vote 2020. Your voice, your future on Fox 28 starts now.
Voters will decide on tax levies for 2 Central Ohio school districts. Voters in Delaware will have the option to renew a tax levy for Delaware City Schools that's been in place for a decade. And Gahanna Jefferson Public Schools placed issue 22 on the ballot to fund the construction and replacement of its current high school. Scoring Our Schools' Lisa Rontola joining us now with more details. Lisa, what are you hearing?
Itself tonight, which did concern the superintendent. I'm standing right in front of the district's current high school. As you said, that levy would pay for its destruction, but also pay for the construction and replacement of this high school. And this is also the very spot where we saw many teachers take to the picket line, leaving their classrooms just weeks ago. Now, teachers then told me that they did support the levy that would cost someone with a $100,000 home an extra $374 a year in property taxes. The district just passed its last levy in 2018. This year, groups formed on Facebook to block it. The superintendent of Gahanna Jefferson Schools said they do expect 700 more kids to enter this growing district in the next 5 years, and it is already over capacity. As it stands right now, Gahanna Lincoln is the 9th largest high school in the state.
During class change, it's really hard for students to get from one side of the building to the other. Often through no fault of their own, they're late for class because our hallways are crowded. We don't have the capacity to feed all of our kids at lunchtime at once.
And the superintendent tells me the elementary schools, the middle schools, also over capacity. This levy would renovate and add 44 more classrooms to those schools if it passes tonight.
Lisa, what happens if this levy does not pass?
You know, I did ask the superintendent that just a few moments ago. He said, look, I understand this is not an ideal year to pass a school levy. You're dealing with COVID-19, you're dealing with unemployment, and for Gahanna voters, they are dealing with that teacher strike, that 4-day teacher strike just a few weeks ago. He said if it does not pass tonight, he can't just turn around and put a levy on the next ballot. He says he's really going to have to survey the community, and find out their wants and their needs. But we do have to sit and wait because some voters said they come out and pass a levy no matter what, because a kid's education just means that much to them. So we'll see what happens next. But for now, reporting live in Gahanna, I'm Lisa Rontola for ABC 6 News.
All right, Lisa, we will check back in with you. Thank you. And developing tonight in Delaware County, Election Day didn't come without controversy there.
Now, you'll recall about 1,000 voters received duplicate mail-in ballots last month when the early voting began. There was an error at the county's Board of Elections. Well, Kaylee Gunderson is there now at the close of Election Day itself. And how did things go, and how are things going tonight, Kaylee?
So, Stacia, Bob, no issues tonight, and they are just now starting to get some of the precincts dropping off their boxes tonight. They've got 48 polling locations throughout the county, 165 precincts they've got to get in. So what you're seeing here is just the first car. So there's still a lot left, to get in tonight. And of course, this is a big county, so it could take time for all of those precincts to get in, having quite a ways to drive tonight. But one of the races, we will be keeping an eye on tonight is the race between Troy Balderson and Elena Shearer for that 12th Congressional District. We know that the early in-person voting numbers are in, which are showing them very close. Troy Balderson just barely ahead, but of course that's just one section of the vote tonight. Obviously we have still the Election Day votes and of course the absentee ballots to count. So we still, have a lot that we're waiting to see here tonight, but we are going to have some more information coming up for those early in-person numbers as we are getting those in now, and we'll bring those to you, of course, when we get those numbers in tonight. For now, back to you.
Kaylee Gunderson tonight in Delaware County. Thank you, Kaylee. We'll go east to Licking County now. ABC 6's Tom Bosco in Newark, following a couple of key races out that way, Tom, and checking in on the situation that voters had today. How did it go?
It went pretty smoothly there. A lot of people, more than 50% voting early in Licking County. Right now, I'm at the DoubleTree Hotel in downtown Newark. 2 years ago, I was here as Troy Balderson won the race to finish Pat Tiberi's term in Congress. And in this COVID age, we are not inside the DoubleTree Hotel tonight, but Troy Balderson is inside the DoubleTree Hotel, watching results, waiting to hear whether he's won another term here. He's expected to have a party inside, smaller, just of some staff, family, and a few supporters, but no press inside due to COVID. Now, the 12th Congressional District encompasses all of Licking County, as well as all of Delaware County and parts of Franklin and Morrow counties as well. Balderson running for that second term. He narrowly edged Democrat Danny O'Connor 2 years ago. In fact, he did it twice, once in that election to fill Tiberi's seat, then again in the general election. Now, Elena Shearer of Delaware County is a former journalist and small business owner. She has run a visible campaign hoping for an upset, but worries the district is gerrymandered in Republicans' favor. Libertarian John Stewart of Gahanna also in the race. Now, some quick results with the early vote counted. Shearer took 70% of the early vote in Franklin County, but here in Licking County, Balderson outpaces her almost 60-40 in the early vote, and as Kaylee mentioned, in Delaware County, Balderson holding an edge, but it is less than 1% among those early voters. But this is the race we are watching tonight, and we hope to hear from those candidates later. Probably not in person, more than likely over virtual means like Zoom or another video conferencing system. Reporting live in Newark, I'm Tom Bosco, ABC 6 News.
Tom, thank you. We want to check back in now with Megan O'Rourke in Dayton. Megan, talk to us about the candidates running for Congressional District 10.
Well, Stacia, of course, District 10 covers Montgomery, Greene, and Fayette counties. This is a very close race that we've been watching throughout the night. Republican Representative Mike Turner has held that office since 2003, though. Tonight he's being challenged by Democrat Desiree Tims, who's been endorsed by former President Obama, as well as the Biden-Harris campaign. Now, we caught up with the candidates earlier today, both addressing how close they're expecting this race to be.
I think the state of Ohio is incredibly ready for this election. I think we'll have information as to what has happened in Ohio already by the end of the evening. We may have to wait for some states who are not as prepared as Ohio, but I think our state has done an excellent job making certain that we're prepared and that we can get the results to the American people.
I think people have had enough of Washington politicians, people who have been in office for decades like Congressman Turner, and they want to make sure they have an opportunity to have their voices heard. Too much has been focused on the 1%, the millionaires and billionaires on Wall Street in New York, and not the people on 3rd Street in Salem.
Now, I've been watching the results come in, and an update just came in a minute ago. Right now, Timms is actually leading 52% of the vote. All the results, again, still coming in. This is very early, with just 220,000 votes being reported. Both candidates opting out of an election party tonight. Timms says that she will address voters tonight on Facebook Live. Congressman Turner, meanwhile, watching those votes come in downtown Dayton from the Schuster Center. We're going to keep a close eye, and we'll keep you posted. For now, though, back to you.
Megan O'Rourke tonight in Dayton. Thank you, Megan. And around the state we go here. Our team in Steubenville now following a couple of key races in the Ohio Valley.
Ohio's 30th Senate District up for grabs, as well as the 96th Congressional District. Want to go now to Rich Pierce joining us with a look at these other key decisions being made as well. Rich.
Hello there and good evening. Voting has been very active in the eastern part of Ohio. To a county, early voting records are being smashed, but a lot of voters waited until today. Here's some video of lines that we saw today, not unlike years past. So we do expect overall records to be broken in many places, if not everywhere, in the Ohio Valley region of the state. This area of the state is Trump country. In some counties, the president beat Hillary Clinton by as much as 30 points in 2016. In fact, according to the Republican Party, the 6th Congressional District had the largest swing of Democrat to Republican voters in the nation. And speaking of that 6th Congressional District, Congressman Bill Johnson is expected to easily retain his seat in the House. You see it there. Democrat challenger Shauna Roberts did not run an active campaign. In fact, she took to Twitter 2 weeks ago to apologize to her supporters about that inactive campaign. And at the state level, it will be interesting to watch this race. The 96th House District. It had been held by Democrat Jack Serra for a decade, but his time is up. He's not running. That seat will be won by either Republican Ron Ferguson, Democrat Richard Oliveto, or Libertarian Oscar Herrera. And you see Ron Ferguson with a big lead right there. And should that red wave continue and this be unchanged, that's a seat that actually flips in the state of Ohio. Now back to the presidential side. Republican Party leaders in the area are expecting a result similar to 2016, maybe even greater of a victory for the president, receiving somewhere in the 70% range of the vote. And that's a look at Jefferson County. And it's interesting to note that in Jefferson County and Belmont County, those are two of the most populous counties in our region, the Ohio Valley. They historically voted Democrat in presidential races since the time of Richard Nixon. It flipped, but by a small margin back in 2012, and then in a big way in 2016. But so far, neither of those counties are matching quite as big of a win for President Trump as we head on into the evening. But of course, that could change. It is still early. Democrats tell us they are optimistic in at least putting a dent in things, maybe not winning the counties, but certainly making it closer. And with things in Ohio polling the way they are, and especially the count going the way it is right now, a few percentage points here and there could certainly mean all the difference. Reporting in Steubenville, Ohio, I'm Rich Pierce. Let's send it back to you.
All right, Rich, thank you. Now, he was talking about flipping those seats in the House. We've been talking a lot about how Republicans hold a 61-38 majority in the Ohio House, and House Democrats have been hoping to flip 12 seats. We were talking to the campaign manager, Ari Alex. 12 seats that would have given the Democrats a 50-49 majority. So we will see what happens now.
At least take the 3 flips and break the supermajority right now that Republicans have. That's a plan B, goal 2 for the Democrats tonight.
We also have reporters following the presidential candidates as well.
Atra El-Nashar in Wilmington, Delaware with the Biden camp for us tonight. Atra, I imagine they're just getting settled in here for a very long night.
Absolutely. In fact, we don't believe Joe Biden is actually here outside or at the Chase Center yet or any nearby hotel because we know that he's watching the returns at his home here in Wilmington with his family, as a lot of families are right now, surrounded around the TV, waiting to see what happens. We know, though, that the mood of the Biden campaign right now is cautiously optimistic. They do not want to see a repeat of 2016, where Democrats were so incredibly confident that that they would win the presidential election, and the rest is history. Joe Biden, he's admitted himself, I've heard it from some sources, that he is superstitious, especially on election day, so he doesn't like anyone talking about a victory around him until it's absolutely certain. And because of that, we may not hear from Joe Biden until we have more of an idea of who's on track to win this race. So you're right, it may be a very long night. It could be a long couple of days, but we do expect to hear from Joe Biden either in the late hours of tonight, possibly early morning on Wednesday.
Atra Elnishar tonight for us in Wilmington, Delaware. Thanks, Atra. We'll check back with you later here. Voters in Toledo will be weighing in on some larger issues, including an income tax renewal for safety services. There is an at-large city council seat open and the race for Lucas County Sheriff. Jay Hanna joining us now with more on those key races in Toledo. Jay?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We got a couple big races here in Lucas County. Now, Lucas County is actually a pretty Democratic area of Ohio, but here locally, the Toledo City Council race has seemed to be the big thing that people are watching. As many people know, in the state of Ohio, Toledo has had some issues with their city council members. 4 of them, Yvonne Harper, Gary Johnson, Larry Sykes, and Tyrone Riley, all facing federal charges of bribery as they were arrested by the FBI this summer. This race here specifically, there's only 1 seat up for grabs. Those 4 seats have been filled. It is actually Katie Moline. We're here at the Attic on Adams in downtown Toledo, I should say uptown Toledo. Katie Moline hosting a watch party for her race. She is going against Republican Tony Dia. Now, if you guys all remember, his son, Tony Dia's son, Anthony Dia, was shot and killed on July 4th while responding to an incident at a Home Depot in North Toledo. Tony Dia says it inspired him to run and work for the people of the city of Toledo. So we'll know a little bit more as far as that race goes. Early voting shows Katie Moline with a pretty big lead, but we'll know a lot more here in the coming hours here in Lucas County. Now, also issue 3 and 4. Wade Kapsakavich, the mayor of Toledo, is trying to bring in a income tax for the city of Toledo. Now, the issue 3 is a renewal, which would simply fund the fire department, the police department. If it does not pass, there would be about 300 people, 300 firefighters, 300 police officers that would have to be laid off, according to the mayor. Issue 4, however, is an actual income tax additional to it. It's a 0.25% income tax that would be added in. And he is trying to push that for the voters. That is issue 4. So in Lucas County, not a whole lot else going on, just a couple of other tax renewals. 1 tax coming from Metro Parks Toledo, that's issue 17. But other than that, that's all it's going here in Lucas County. Be sure to stay tuned for all the latest results up here. Reporting live in Toledo, I'm Jay Hanna, NBC 24 News.
Jay, thank you. The race for Ohio's 3rd congressional district has been called tonight for incumbent Democrat Joyce Beatty. Haley Nelson joins us live tonight. Now, Haley, you expect to hear from her soon. What are you hearing?
In just a little bit, maybe in 10 or 15 minutes, about these results. But of course, she's the projected winner for the 3rd district, which covers much of the Columbus area. Now, she was highly favored in this race, certainly, and these projected results were called very early in her favor. Now, just a little bit ago, I spoke with her Republican opponent, Mark Richardson, about these results, about his message to the community. I want to move to the side. There's actually a GOP watch party going on right now. This is the Park Street Cantina in the Arena District area. He and other Republican supporters are here watching results. They have all the TVs on inside as they come in. I asked him about these results so far. Take a listen to what he has to say.
Well, I think we need to wait till the vote comes in, number one. But it has been an amazing race. You know, Joyce has shown a lot of civility in this race. You know, hats off to her and her campaign. We both have had a very civil campaign.
And the veteran and first-time candidate says he wants the district and the entire community to unite. He's thanking all the folks in the district, appreciates the questions and discussions along the way. And I asked him, he says he does have sights on more political activity in the future. Now, we are expecting to speak with Joyce Beatty around 8:55, 9 o'clock tonight. I'll bring you updates as we speak with her. But like I said, she was very favored in this race. And of course, she's been the face of this district for many, many years. Live in the Arena District, I'm Haley Nelson.
Haley, thanks so much. Well, we've been told to make sure we pack our patience along here on election night tonight. Might be a while before we actually knows who wins the big races tonight.
Election night 2020 might stretch into election week. Election law analyst Stephen Huffner joins us now with an in-depth look at what we can expect. So what can we expect, Stephen?
Well, we're going to have to wait to see a little bit longer what happens in some of these most contested battleground states, with Pennsylvania being the most critical of those. I know that some people were wondering whether we'd have an early sense of things tonight, and that would have depended on states like Florida or Georgia or North Carolina clearly going for Biden, and that doesn't seem to be what's happening in those states. So it's going to come down to Pennsylvania, maybe Ohio, and Arizona also could make quite a difference to the outcome. And of course, the problem is Pennsylvania is not going to be able to count the vast quantity of the mail-in ballots until after today. That's just how their state law works.
And if an election result isn't certain, what could help decide the presidency?
Well, it's always been the case that we don't have official results until some days or weeks after. Again, that varies from state to state. But if it's incredibly close, what will go on is, in addition to double checking all of the results, there will be some contests about whether certain subsets of absentee ballots or provisional ballots are eligible to be counted. And maybe court challenges even about ballots that have already been counted that someone might argue should not have been counted. So we will be off to the races, if you will, if it proves to be a very close race in a particular state that is the tipping point state.
How real are those concerns about voter fraud?
Well, concerns about voter fraud are, I think, largely overdrawn. The number of instances of provable voter fraud engaged in by an individual voter are vanishingly small. Now, that's not to say that we should ignore the risk. On the contrary, we want to make sure that we continue to design and use processes that reduce to almost zero the chance that there could be fraud. We have occasionally seen problems where some insider or someone who gains access to a large quantity of ballots has tried to manipulate them. We saw that as recently as 2018 in the North Carolina congressional race, where someone was collecting and then manipulating a whole set of absentee ballots. So we are vigilant to prevent that from happening, and it's quite rare that it does happen.
Stephen Huffner joining us live tonight. Thank you for your insight.
The Trump campaign says that they're confident people voting today will get them to the finish line for a second term.
St. Clair National correspondent James Rosen is at the White House with a look at how President Trump is spending the final hours of the campaign. So, James, have you heard from the president tonight? What is he having to say so far?
Station, Rob, good evening from the White House, where we understand President Trump is taking in the election returns inside the executive mansion. We did hear from him much earlier today around 10 a.m. Eastern Time when he made what you might consider his final stop of this campaign cycle, a short trip across the Potomac River to Northern Virginia, specifically to Arlington and to his own campaign headquarters. And there he thanked his supporters and volunteers, spoke about what an honor it has been to serve as President of the United States, directed, as you might imagine, a few barbs at the news media, and mounted, in response to one reporter's question, his final defense of his handling of the coronavirus, in essence telling reporters that he thinks he did all the right things except perhaps on the public relations angle of those policies. Now, I've been speaking with senior Trump campaign aides throughout the day and just in recent hours, and they are projecting what they call calm confidence that things are breaking for the president as he needed them to tonight. They were counting on heavy Trump turnout on Election Day to make up for the massive advantage that former Vice President Biden had amassed in the early pre-Election Day balloting. And I had one campaign aide tell me today we've been looking for bad news across the country in various counties, and so far we're not seeing it. To the contrary, the Trump campaign believes they have won Florida, with some 85+% of the votes there having come in, and the Panhandle, which is Trump country, being the last remaining part that they were expecting to hear from. We have been hearing from the Trump campaign that if things go as they expect, with a massive turnout for the president on Election Day, with his voters being more predisposed to vote on Election Day than the Democratic voters who were more predisposed to vote early, that they were projecting that in the state of Ohio, President Trump, amongst all the votes cast on Election Day, would come out with a margin of victory in those votes over the former vice president of 400,000. We'll see if that pans out. But so far, the Trump campaign thinks they're going to be outperforming the president's numbers in 2016 with some key groups, including African Americans and Latinos. So calm confidence from the Trump campaign so far tonight. Obviously, we have a lot left to learn about this election. Rob and Stacia.
Those are interesting facts you're giving us there, James. Where is the president actually watching the returns?
We believe he's inside the executive mansion. We did see the First Lady, Melania Trump, cast her ballot at a polling station in Palm Beach, Florida earlier today. She offered a brief wave to onlookers as she went in, and presumably, Rob and Stacia, we can say safely that we know for whom the First Lady voted.
Pretty certain about that one for sure. James Rosen tonight from the White House. Thanks so much, James. And Rodney Donegan also has a very busy night ahead for us right now, tracking a lot of big races for us tonight, specifically the State House itself. One of them really shrouded in controversy, Rodney, and that, of course, the seat belonging to Representative Larry Householder, who is right now embroiled in scandal and yet bidding for yet another term at the State House.
Well, that's exactly right, Bob, and I've been tracking the numbers with the Secretary of State's office, and at this point, that race has not been called, but Larry Householder has 100% of the votes. There were several write-in candidates hoping to make a mark, but it doesn't appear that that's going to happen. Now, as of right now, that means despite all of the recent controversy and the charges against him, he will more than likely keep that seat. The racketeering case against him cost him his position as Speaker of the House, and a conviction could land him in prison for 20 years. Despite it all, he's still got plenty of support in his district, including the endorsement of the Perry County Republican Party.
I'm a strong believer of innocent until proven guilty. Out of all the candidates out there, I think he is the #1 guy for the job.
All right, and another big race that we're following tonight, Franklin County Prosecutor Ron O'Brien is fighting to keep his position. Former appeals court judge Gary Tyack is hoping to come away with that win tonight in this race. And at this point, Gary Tyack has a wide lead with 62% of that vote. But again, it has not been called at this point. Of course, we'll have updates throughout the night on that race. As soon as we get information on the rest of them, we'll bring it to you as soon as possible. Bob and Stacia, back to you.
All right, Rodney Donegan reporting here for us tonight from the State House races. Still waiting for the returns to come in full flight for that one here. Steve Levine is monitoring the return of the ballots in Franklin County Board of Election here. I think we've got some pictures here. The vehicles have begun to show up from the various precincts here. See them all lined up there, dropping off the ballots, each vehicle with a Democrat and a Republican in as required by law. And they're dropping off each of the returns from the various precincts. A steady line of cars now returning the ballots in Franklin County.
And we've seen a lot of energy as these returns arrive, because once they arrive inside, you can hear the folks there inside who receive them cheering and just celebrating the end to this day. And of course, we are following the results very closely tonight. So that is a look there at your returns and your votes being counted.
We'll take a brief break here and return with our coverage in a moment.
Vote 2020. Your voice, your future on ABC6 starts now.
Vote 2020 happening right here in Central Ohio. We're following the races here and, of course, across the state as we wait to see what happens tonight.
All right, Jeff Reddick is standing by here tonight. Before we get to him, though, we'll look at U.S. House District 3. This congressional seat returns to Joyce Beatty handily tonight, the Democrat now elected to a 5th term in Congress.
And also being challenged tonight, Franklin County Prosecutor Ron O'Brien, Democrat Gary Tyack running against O'Brien. You can see right here we only have 2% of precincts reporting, and we will continue to follow these results closely.
Columbus residents also deciding whether to approve Issue 1. This is what's known as an opt-out green energy plan that promises to supply 100% of the city's power needs with renewable energy by 2023. And right now, 80% of the electorate is for Issue 2.
All right, so at this point, we want to check in with Jeff Reddick, who joins us live in Westerville at the GOP watch party happening there. Jeff, what are you hearing from folks inside?
Yeah, still nothing from Republicans here. They remain kind of sequestered across the hall from us, and we're in a media room here by ourselves. We have a podium back there, but they still haven't come to that podium to say anything in about the 90 minutes since the polls closed. What we do know is Ohio's numbers are still trending towards Joe Biden, but we are still waiting for most of the state's votes to come in. This number, 54% to Biden, 45% to Trump, is the latest we have. It represents about 3.2 million total votes. As you know, 3.4 million Ohioans voted early or absentee, so we're approaching that number. Still waiting for a lot more votes to come in, and we expect this to really tighten as the night goes on. Guys?
Thanks for joining us here for our statewide look at election night 2020.
Vote 2020 continues right here. We hope you'll stay with us.